This is the way. Welcome back, folks, to Bring Your Own Lightsaber. We are breaking down episode 3 of season 3 of The Mandalorian. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan. I'm joined by Cam, as always, and a special guest host today, Greg, joining the podcast. Greg, did you bring your own lightsaber?
I brought one, but it's in about 6,000 pieces. I'm putting it together. If I can ignite it before we finish, that would be pretty cool. We'll hope for the best.
Yeah, Greg, glad to have you. Avid lightsaber enthusiast over here.
Lightsaber enthusiast, Star Wars enthusiast, Mando enthusiast. I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say about this week's episode because I listened to the last 2 weeks worth of content and get into it, guys. I want to contribute.
Yeah, what an episode to bring a guest on for.
Yeah, a little different than usual.
One that's not even about Mando.
Yeah, we might have called this the Dr. Empire.
Dr.
Communications.
Dr. Empire would be an incredible title for a show.
Amnesty episode.
Yeah. Okay, no, well, you want to go through it scene bit by bit.
We'll break it down bit by bit, which, like we said, not much of the Mando, but I was saying towards the end there, the beginning scene, that opening scene with Bo-Katan again, that was enough for me. That's all I need. I could watch 12 straight hours
of them just dogfighting or cutting things with the Darksaber. Yeah, that was quite a dogfight. We said earlier, it's nice to see Katie Sackhoff in a fighter pilot position. Mm-hmm. Basically, just what was her name? Starbuck from Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah. Brings back some memories for sure.
It really does. And I think she's a good actress too. So it's cool to see her living it up.
What's the word? How do we describe
Top Gun?
I was going to say badass, but that as well. I mean,
yeah. Well, she as a character is just the single most badass character, I think, in recent memory of Star Wars, especially live action. And yeah, that was just very Top Gun vibe scene. The breaks in the end to take out the last TIE fighter or interceptor, I think they were.
Yeah, they were interceptors.
Do we want to start with? Could have been some drama, maybe not. Just the very opening of the show.
Yeah, before the cool scene.
Before the coolness, maybe some slight drama we get. Just picking up at the cliffhanger of last episode.
Yeah.
Bo and Mando, they're back in the mine. Mando survived. He's breathing. Doesn't take the helmet off, but he's breathing.
Doesn't remember anything.
No. She asks him, "Did you see anything?" She's really trying to make it
out.
Right. And no. She did.
It's a little hard to believe that you wouldn't recall a gigantic mythosaur grabbing you by the ankle and yanking you down 200 feet into a crevice, but maybe he instantly knocked his head off on the cliff that he was standing on and doesn't remember anything.
I imagine a mythosaur pulls with a lot of force. It might be a good kind of whiplash he got there. He might be concussed right now.
It took him a little bit to come back from that one. So
yeah, but seems like Bo-Katan was a little jealous, perhaps, that the mythosaur went after him.
Well,
or he had that first interaction.
Jealousy is one way to put it. I mean, I thought it was interesting that the mythosaur kind of reveals itself. Whether we have to assume it dragged Din down there and then didn't kill him, right?
For a reason.
So the jealousy part could be Bo-Katan saying, "Oh, you got to interact with that monster that is very, very, very near and dear to the hearts of Mandalorians, and not die." So that means something very significant. But Bo-Katan, if anything, is quite self-interested, and that's all we've really ever seen of her. So she watches this happen, and she says, "Well, if I'm ever going to take my moment to challenge Din for the Darksaber, I can't have him believing that he is the one true ruler of Mandalore or the heir. Otherwise, he might fight like he is, and that could be a problem."
It could also be a way for her to kind of just keep something in her back pocket, not dirt on him, but something to kind of hold over him in a way. Or it could also maybe even be used in kind of the opposite way of, if they're desperate for something to bring all these Mandalorians back together, she could use that as some way to kind of unify them.
Right. And even a third option here is, yes, Mando was pulled down by the mythosaur, but Bo-Katan was not going to jump into that water if that hadn't happened. Could that have been the mythosaur getting Bo-Katan into the water?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point.
I mean, I don't know enough about Mandalorian heritage and culture to know whether or not the mythosaur is supposed to be something that you seek out and dominate, or something that comes to you. I mean,
Right.
we've seen
the name of it makes it seem like it's something that's going to come to you.
yeah,
but
we've seen with the Darksaber that it doesn't necessarily go where it wants to by choice, but if it gets somewhere it doesn't want to be, it might leave, right? So we talked earlier about Bo-Katan getting the Darksaber from Sabine Wren in Rebels. And then at that point, we don't know what happens to it until we see Moff Gideon with it at the end of season 1 of Mandalorian.
Mhm.
So the implication is, well, whether they fought and she lost the Darksaber, like, did it leave her because it wasn't truly hers to own?
Mhm.
Well, I don't know if it necessarily wanted to go to Moff Gideon, but that's neither here nor there at this point.
True.
So didn't want it in combat, and that's how it is to be taken. I mean, we're talking about the Elder Wand here. So we could follow it all the way from Maul, but at some point Maul has it, and he definitely took it. Whether, you could make the case, well, Palpatine defeats Maul during that arc in the Clone Wars where he kills Savage Opress, and then Palpatine would theoretically be the owner of the Darksaber, but then Mace Windu defeats Palpatine, Anakin defeats Mace Windu.
It's a rabbit hole.
Yeah,
Obi-Wan defeats Vader in the new series, then Vader defeats Obi-Wan at the end of A New Hope, and then Vader remains uncontested until Luke defeats him in Return of the Jedi, and then Luke would be the owner at that point. But clearly that's not what happened, because the Darksaber changed hands before all of that.
Right.
So who knows?
Because who knows where the technical ownership is if you win it but don't take it.
Does it leave? Is it always? Does it know somehow that it's one true master?
Right.
It's like Obi or Luke somewhere off at the other end of the galaxy, or does it not?
I'll say is I wouldn't complain about Bo-Katan having more action with the Darksaber.
I mean,
after that last episode,
I wouldn't complain if Luke got some more action.
I
So
think
let's go that route if possible.
Bo-Katan being as self-interested and excitable as she is, I think it would be wildly interesting to see if she ends up trying to take the Darksaber, but in Luke's presence or Ahsoka's presence, and just watching one of them put her down. Not put her down definitively, as
I mean, I wouldn't mind
kill her.
watching that either.
But I wouldn't mind
That'd be a
watching
good battle.
them, like Bo-Katan, try ever so desperately to take down either Luke or
honestly, I feel like she'd
or
put up a
Ahsoka.
pretty good fight.
Or
She would, but she'd get stomped.
if we
Eventually,
want to talk about what we saw in episode 1 of this season, the I can't remember what they're called, the big squid space, the hyperspace
space whales.
Yeah.
Purgles.
Thank you.
Is that the official?
If that is going to
Purgle,
herald the entrance of Ezra Bridger to
Mhm.
this series,
Which is better?
there's a scene where Sabine is training with Ezra while she's wielding the Darksaber, and she moderately bests him with all of the tools in the arsenal of a Mandalorian, and it's a particularly interesting scene. What if we got that in live action, but it's Bo-Katan instead of Sabine Wren?
Well, we got a taste of it. Her fighting with the Darksaber with her little wrist shield, the cable. Did she have the flamethrower? I think she might have in that scene in the last
I think
episode.
she did too.
And just all those things. Her jetpack, obviously.
Yeah.
It's a pretty lethal combo.
Well, the theme of that kind of episode was Sabine saying, I'm not ready for this. She's not ready for this in that moment, though. If she's coming back into Star Wars, maybe she's ready now. Maybe she's ready to wield that.
Do you think Sabine and the Rebels crew go off to find Ezra after he vanishes into hyperspace with Thrawn?
They could come back together, or their search could come to the end as he shows back up right on time for Mandalorian, and they all meet up by coincidence.
So I think in one of your other episodes, you guys were talking about what is going to be the big bad of this series. Well, bringing Dr. Pershing into this episode, which we'll get into later, I suppose, confuses me because I didn't know where we were going to go. But ultimately, if an Imperial remnant is going to be a part of this, and that's either going to be a shepherd for the First Order or for Palpatine's return in The Rise of Skywalker or whatever, is that Imperial remnant commanded by Thrawn? Because that's what you guys had alluded to in your last episode. And I really thought, well, if Thrawn's the guy who's coming back, that perfectly sets up Ahsoka for her show.
Right.
Especially if they make that kind of one of the ending gambits. But I can't tell you how excited I am to see those bright red eyes and that blue skin.
So, I mean, we could sit here and we could talk about theories for hours and hours and hours.
The lineage of the Darksaber is like a 3-episode podcast alone. So let's kind of pick back up with where we left off, which was Mando and Bo. They kind of emerge from the waters, and they head back onto her beautiful ship that we love seeing from the Clone Wars every time.
Dude, I would have an N1 over. I think that's a nice ship, but the N1 Naboo Starfighter is probably one of my favorite ships from all of Star Wars. And seeing that in Book of Boba Fett,
it does look better silver than yellow.
You know,
I was just about to ask, what do you think, silver versus yellow?
I mean, I like the traditional sleek Naboo, or the Nubian style of the original cruisers, but there is something pretty guttural about the way they just stripped it out and turned it into like a.
It looks more Mandalorian.
Yeah,
very Mando. Yeah.
So yeah, we see the cool dogfight and everything. I'm curious to know exactly how this Empire fleet found them, who's exactly commanding them, how there's so many of them, because obviously we see they take out like 4 or 5 of them initially, and then the bombers show up and destroy Sabine. Not Sabine. Now I'm thinking Rebels. Bo-Katan's castle.
What a bunch of rude people.
Yeah. No common courtesy.
That droid, rest in peace to her droid.
Yeah, the little greeter droid that actually never really did his job, but her castle gets blown up by the bombers, and she wants to hunt them down, obviously. And all of a sudden on their little radar, we get 50, 100 bleeps show up with all these different TIE fighters, TIE interceptors, and they have to dip out of there. All we really know is that sounds like the lightsaber's working.
Sounds like it's not working. That was not a good sound.
There's currently a lightsaber being built right next to us, folks. It's incredible.
Greg literally brought his own lightsaber.
Oh, that's a bad sound.
They dip out. Din basically sends over some jump coordinates, and they pop off to like hyperspace to get to safety, essentially, to avoid this enormous fleet of TIE fighters.
And that was kind of something we brought up earlier in the podcast. Was in episode 1, we had that nice little hint of some dogfighting with the pirates that Mando just absolutely destroyed them. They were no match for him. And we said, you know what, bring on more of that. And they did.
Yeah.
And they did it.
It's literally been the best showing of this spaceship dogfighting that we've seen since episode 3. And it's just a nice touch.
You really don't get much dogfighting where you have 2 ships involved either in Star Wars. I know that in episode 3, you get kind of the battle above Coruscant. You get to follow Obi-Wan and Anakin. And it's nice that, okay, this is certainly not a full-scale war above a planet, but in the trenches, switching back and forth, it was really nice.
It makes me think that it's almost like a nice touch because there's obviously not going to be the crazy lightsaber fights that we have from like traditional Star Wars. So this is almost like a fill-in for that.
Well, there was this guy I used to watch on YouTube a long time ago who tried to rewrite the prequel trilogy to suit a more invigorated universe, less of the midichlorians and boring politics, which I actually like all of those things because I'm a prequel crazy person. But he had some really unique ideas, and he had sort of hypothesized at the beginning of his whole venture. He made 3 like feature length kind of stop motion films or whatever it was. He got voice actors for one of them, and they were interesting. But his YouTube it was Bandit Incorporated. That's who it was. Long time
Bandit
ago.
Incorporated.
Yeah.
His main premise was a Star Wars movie needs 3 things. It needs some quality ship-to-ship combat, right? So if you look at A New Hope, they have the trench run at the end of the movie. Empire Strikes Back, you've got the Falcon being chased by all kinds of stuff. And really that main asteroid sequence pursued by those ships when it ends up in the space slug's gut. That's that scene there. And you could also make the comment that the original assault on the base at Hoth was a good assortment of ship battling, right? It wasn't necessarily air combat as much as it was kind of ground combat, but whatever, it's still ships. And then the assault on the Death Star at the end of Return of the Jedi. There's your ship combat in all 3 movies. The third element is, the second element is a lightsaber battle. You got to have a major pièce de résistance, your lightsaber duel that has not just like cool showy moves in it, but some genuine emotion behind it.
Yeah.
So you got Obi-Wan versus Vader, right? And when you're watching that movie for the first time in 1970 or whatever year it was, you think to yourself, well, these are just quintessential good and bad. Like, I don't really know much more beyond that. But now that the universe is 50 years old or whatever, you think, wow, there really is a lot behind that moment, especially now that we got the Kenobi show, and as opinions on that as reserved as they are, it just gives that much more to it.
Right.
Okay, so that's that movie. Father and Son, which you don't know is father and son until the end in The Empire Strikes Back, and then Return of the Jedi, it's the redemption battle between father and son again. Epic moments filled with passion. And you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know if the last part of that movie formula was a love story or a love triangle or something like that, but that's the best I got.
Okay.
So I'd have to dig through YouTube, like 10 years ago YouTube to find what that last part is. But so far in this show, we've gotten plenty of ship combat. We've gotten a little bit of lightsaber action, but no quintessential lightsaber duel.
Right.
And then love story has not been something we've ever really had in this.
But we're monitoring a couple.
We are.
We thought for a second Dr. Pershing was going to get busy in this episode. He got fooled.
No, the glasses did not come off in this episode. No romance for Dr. Pershing. Instead, we're still kind of rooting for another coupling, I think.
I'm still leaning in for hope with Bo-Katan and Din Djarin, especially now that we'll talk about it later on, but she's been cleansed, so to say.
So are you shipping here? Are we full Bo-Katan and Din Djarin shipping? Because
can we give them a bachelor nickname?
What's the name for this?
Oh God,
Bo-Jaren?
Bo-Jaren. Yeah. First thing that came to mind.
I think that's it. Bo-Jaren.
I don't mind them dangling the thought that could happen, but I think it would be a better story if they threatened it as a possibility and then somebody makes a big betrayal, and it's got to probably be Bo-Katan screwing Din over.
Yeah.
But as far as I know, they have no plans to end this franchise heralded by our lovely Pedro Pascal. So probably won't get that. But if they had
to build a second Darksaber, and then they can both have one.
Well, I had thought about that last week. I thought, well, what if Din? But you need to have a Force-sensitive person to go through that whole experience, and we haven't gotten that.
Well, Grogu's the stepchild of the couple. There you go.
Right, Grogu's not made.
Point rescinded. That is, Grogu would be the exact example I'm looking for. A Force-sensitive Mandalorian to refound the Mandalorian ways. That would be interesting.
They've dangled that from the beginning. I think it would be such a strange choice. I think. How does this small little
season
creature...
1 and 2? It was a joke. It was get him back to his people. Like, well, everybody saw the little comics of Grogu wearing a Mandalorian helmet
How
with
cute
a
would it
lightsaber
be with the little Mandalorian helmet, a tiny jetpack?
Right.
Come on, flying around.
But I wouldn't say nobody in their right mind. I certainly did not think they would go that way. But as soon as he left Luke, I was like, okay then.
Right.
I thought it was going to be like he goes to join Luke, and then Din comes back for some cool adventures here and there.
Right. No one was seriously thinking this could be an option, I don't think.
I mean, you could have made Grogu stays with Luke, but then this whole season is about Din discovering some dastardly threat in the in the unexplored territories or whatever, right? The unknown regions. They could have done the Yuuzhan Vong from the original books. They could do the Chiss Empire, which is Thrawn's people. They could do Imperial remnants, like from some of the more recent books with Moff Gideon or whatever. I just think it'd be, if they did that, he finds the big bad of the universe at the time, right? Because the Empire's gone, so what's the big bad? He brings the big bad into the fold, and then Luke has to show up and do something about it, which is what fans have been clamoring for about 40 years.
I mean, Ezra could be a big bad, actually.
You think he could be a big bad, huh?
He could have swapped on his...
He's been with Thrawn for quite a while now.
But
if they're together.
Thrawn is so clever.
He doesn't really believe in the Force, though. He's a military strategist. He's aware of the Force's existence as I am of the federal government. But I don't
He doesn't
care about it,
worship
or
it, yeah.
right?
Like he wouldn't be trying to turn Ezra into like a super weapon for the Empire by any means.
Unless he was, right?
Right,
And they
right.
could do whatever they want to do with his character because he is brilliant and manipulative, and I would enjoy that.
Hear me out. This thought just crossed my mind. The Darksaber is too big for Grogu. Ezra Bridger comes back, gives Grogu his first lightsaber. That's the little one that shoots a little taser shots out of it.
God, I hate
And
that thing.
Grogu gets that as
That was
first
the
lightsaber.
most
I think
like,
that's still too big for him.
spit in the face. Sorry, as a lightsaber enthusiast
Yeah.
and caring about the meaning of these weapons and how they're used.
But
Obviously,
it
I
fit because
understand
Grogu
it's
doesn't follow the traditional Jedi path now, and he's learning about the Mandalorians who have all these different weapons.
We're in an
You're right
uncivilized
about
time.
that. You're
It's an
right about that.
uncivilized
He
time
is
right
certainly
now.
not a traditional Force user. So a
He does
non-traditional
use the Force to swivel in
user's
chairs and grab jelly beans.
That is probably the best use of the Force.
That is true. That's all I would do all day. So again, look at us getting off topic here. So shall we dive into? We can come back to the theories at the end, but let's get through the bulk of the not so Mandalorian episode of the Mandalorian.
Right, and this kind of we get through that dogfight. Mando says, I know somewhere they won't follow, where they'll never find us. And then we expect they're going to cut and we're going to see which planet that is. Instead, we cut. All of a sudden, we're on Coruscant.
Yeah, which we had a little heads up from the plot preview. And I was skeptical. I was saying, is this really where Din Djarin says they're never going to find us? And it would have been a good point because I guess the Empire that's the last place they'd want to go.
Right.
Yep.
But
it
seemed a little out of Din Djarin's comfort zone.
So this was not only the first time that we've seen Coruscant since, if you're speaking in terms of Star Wars, since when is the last time we've seen Coruscant?
I think the last literal time is Clone Wars.
That's the last, in our time.
Right, in our time.
The last time you see Coruscant is at the end of Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
There's some added scenes from Return of the Jedi of the celebration. Yep, they have a quick little blurb of the fireworks, but again, that's added, so I don't take that for whatever it's worth.
And so this is our first time seeing it, and what do? They open on the Opera House, which is quite a special place.
I thought that was cool.
Quite a special place for Star Wars fans.
It's kind of
they
cool
didn't talk about the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise, though, so I don't know if I really care.
Right.
There were no giant bubbles.
George Lucas was not decked out in blue, sitting on the side of the stairs, hanging out this time.
It was cool to see that not much had seemingly changed, though.
Right. And actually, that was something one of the characters on Coruscant had said, that they're just basically explaining the rich aristocrats. Oh, rebels, empire,
right.
We don't care.
Right. They try to stay out of it. They don't want to get involved with any of the drama.
I do like when they give us good cultural points. I mean, in Obi-Wan, you just kind of see there's farmers, and you got the bit with the clone trooper that was kind of pleading for money or whatever. That was a really unique bit, but predominantly in Star Wars, the cultures are kind of glossed over, and I felt like in Andor they explored some interesting cultural differences with some different characters and groups from different planets, like the planet where that storm happens and they do the heist, which was pretty epic. But I thought it was interesting to see that, there's an aristocracy on this planet that hasn't really changed since the end of the Empire. It's still there. They never really paid attention. That's kind of a sad thing to think about our society. We just have rich people who there's war over there.
Right. It's a pretty privileged planet. Let's be honest. Dead center of the universe.
Places like Tatooine and whatnot that are just going through it the whole time.
Hey, they don't have a Boba Fett on Coruscant. Maybe he needs to expand.
That's true.
Show them the way. So we're on Coruscant, and I thought we're kind of getting a different side of Coruscant, at least for me. I know in the prequels, it was very much, you have the Jedi and you have the aristocrats, but I thought the prequels kind of focused more on the underworld, especially in episode 2 and Anakin's whole...
You don't see much of the surface of Coruscant aside from the Jedi Temple and a couple of the different homes and whatnot that they go to, and the Senate. But this time we see the streets, we see the buildings, the rooftop, we see the tallest mountain. on Coruscant.
To me, for the first time, it actually seemed like a pleasant planet. There wasn't really any seediness or dirtiness, really, at least that maybe New Republic comes in and they really turn things around.
Could've.
But this could just be the difference between upper world and underworld on Coruscant.
And at the end of the day, it's probably exactly what it is. Just the fact that we didn't get to go down into the depths quite so much. And maybe I'm sure we will come back to that with some of the new characters that we see, or old characters, I should say, that they brought back, having been known apparently for doing some shady stuff.
Right. We are in Coruscant, in the Opera House. And who do we see in the center of the opera?
Dr. Empire. Dr. Pershing, as Greg would like to correct me.
Pershing. Yeah.
Pershing?
Dr. Pershing, I think.
Yeah. Pershing, yeah. He's back. The glasses are big as ever.
Yeah, bigger than ever, you could say.
And he's kind of introducing us to this Imperial Amnesty program.
Yeah, he's giving a TED Talk.
He basically was giving a TED Talk. We wanted to kind of see the bubbles in the background of the Opera House. We didn't get that. But we get Dr. Pershing, which is a nice kind of, at least for me, I thought that was surprising. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
I mean, if they bothered to set up the whole story about the Empire's after Grogu for his midichlorian count because they're trying to clone Force-sensitive beings because they're trying to resurrect Palpatine, if that's what this Imperial Remnant is up to, I guess it doesn't make sense to just throw that storyline away because they captured Moff Gideon.
Right.
Because that has to be bigger than just him, right?
Mm-hmm.
If Palpatine's involved, it's big. Now, they could be doing something else, but what on earth would they use that technology for in this universe other than that storyline? And as many people as I know that have seen the Rise of Skywalker, somehow Palpatine returned.
Right.
Oh my God, what a way.
So this could be the way to kind of cover the bases almost.
Yeah,
like the blunder that movie was.
Right, and a lot of people felt the same way about the prequel trilogy. Why would you go that route? Why are you doing this? Like, okay, if you're going to do that, you got to get in there and explain why this is the best choice for the universe. And that's why Rogue One is, to this day, my favorite Star Wars movie. Because the most glaringly obvious... Are we okay?
I think we're okay.
The most glaringly obvious issue with A New Hope is the fact that you could just drop a torpedo down this hole that's relatively unguarded. Just fucking cover it. Excuse my French. Can you bleep me out? I hope you can. Just cover the hole with like a piece of plywood or something. Like that would have solved the problem. There's all kinds of Family Guy jokes about that.
For sure.
Funny. Why? Why is that? Why is it so easy to this intergalactic power that's got the naval equivalent of like 1,000 USAs or whatever?
Ventilation, Greg. They were getting hot in the Death Star.
Yeah, but all you need is like one turn in that whole thing to throw off their plane. But it's an inside job. Everything that is too big to actually be conceivably destroyed in an easy way, that is destroyed in an easy way, there has to be somebody fighting it on the inside that gave them that opportunity.
Right.
And I thought the whole Rogue One premise was brilliant. The way they actually made the Empire feel like true villains and powerful ones at that.
Right.
Darth Vader. I should stop talking because I'll get too excited.
Well, the thing about Rogue One is that they use Rogue One in order to explain some of the faults of some of the movies, basically, and give us this extra background that we need. And Rogue One was so good. And the thing about Mandalorian is obviously everyone loves the Mandalorian, and that's maybe what they're trying to do is use the show that everyone loves to kind of explain some of these things that they're like, okay, we messed up on in the past. Let's try to cover up some of these blemishes in a way that the people can kind of look back on and hopefully enjoy now because it was through the Mandalorian.
Yes. And that's a good stopping point for our first break of the episode. We'll come right back and get back into Dr. Pershing's story. All right, welcome back from break. We're ready to dive back into our time on Coruscant. Just once again, we're on Coruscant in the Opera House. Dr. Pershing's in the center of the opera, and he's kind of explaining, this was the work that I did for the Empire. but hey, now I'm so excited to bring whatever I can bring to the New Republic.
Right. It wasn't the Darth Plagueis story that we know the Opera House for, but it was the Dr. Pershing story. Kind of the work that he was doing, the research, the reason he was doing it, how his mother had died, and yeah, just kind of how he can bring it and hopefully help this new empire that's given him this kind of second chance.
Which I thought it was nice to get that perspective on him. I mean, it's very clear that he was a good guy doing a bad guy's work.
Yeah.
In the show in season 1 when Din decides not to kill him, and then he's present again in season 2, right? And then when they take Gideon prisoner, that's when he gets sent to the New Republic, I assume.
Yeah.
So he's always showing remorse, but he is as much a prisoner of the Empire as somebody else, because he's working for them, right? He thinks he's doing good things, and he probably could do really good things if it's in the right hands, right? And I guess that's obviously where this show, that's how the show works with him as a character, or this episode, I mean. But you
were kind of saying this earlier, Greg. I think this kind of whole episode is serving the purpose of just a reminder this cloning story isn't going anywhere. This is still very much a part of this show.
Yeah. And if they want to take it and use that to be, they're going to show us how Palpatine somehow returned. I would like to see it. I would like it to be interesting and like fruitful, but also meaningful and weighted in the sense that like, I don't want it to just be like, oh, yep, we cloned Grogu and now it's a thing. I want there to be like some emotion behind how this all went down. Because it shouldn't just... George Lucas decided that he was going to do the whole prophecy thing in the prequel trilogy. Okay, so he wrote the story of Anakin Skywalker and how Anakin Skywalker's ultimate destiny was to fulfill the prophecy of the Force and bring balance to it by destroying the Sith and kind of the Jedi. I mean, that's not how it went. But like the 10,000 Jedi and no Sith. Okay, now there's 2 Sith and no Jedi. Well, there was some in hiding. Now there's 1 Jedi and no Sith when Luke survives and Vader's dead. And I guess the title Return of the Jedi is to indicate that Vader has risen, or Anakin Skywalker has risen from the dark side to become one with the light again, as opposed to Luke becoming a Jedi and showcasing the actual return of Jedi to the universe. But the last implication of that, the weight of that story being completely undone by the sequel trilogy, bringing in Palpatine again. Now, obviously, there's some books that did it, but the thing about the books is those stories are really woven very slowly, and they usually get into pretty great detail. He just glossed all over it, and I do not care for that.
I think you're right. I think that kind of is a little bit of what they're doing. I think it was in season 2 on Navarro. It was on Navarro,
yeah, when they went to the Empire's base.
There was a base, Navarro, and there were some tubes with what looked like Snokes in them. And not only that, we've also seen that in the Bad Batch as well, I believe.
I was going to say that in his little TED Talk, he mentions the Kaminoans that obviously made the clones. And he doesn't necessarily say the cloning technology, but he just says like the advances and research that those Kaminoan doctors made. So obviously they were up to some other stuff as well as just like the pure cloning that they did, right? They were smart people. They were doing this stuff before the Clone Wars. So it's like, what else did they have kind of up their sleeve that the Empire wiggled out of them?
Yeah. It's just kind of this theme of Empire being sketchy and taking advantage of people, continuing through into the new, I guess you could call this the new Star Wars. I know Rey and Kylo and their adventures were supposed to be that new era. This is the era that people are
this
actually...
This is the much better era.
The best era of Star Wars.
People care more about Ahsoka and Grogu and Mando than any of the new trilogy.
And I would have to say that's true. And hey, maybe one day we'll get a movie with all these characters in it.
And that would be the day that I can die happy.
Yeah, so getting back to Dr. Pershing, kind of leaving the Opera House, he's now living in Amnesty housing in Coruscant with kind of other Imperial folks who, I don't know if they had been captured or if they kind of, I assume they must have been captured.
It sounds like a program you kind of apply to or like show up for and be like, hey, I'd like to kind of make up for everything. I'd like to join this program and then come help the New Republic.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say they were necessarily, maybe they were captured, but it sounds like most of them like willingly volunteered for it.
What it might be is perhaps if someone, maybe you're an Imperial remnant and you get brought in by someone of the New Republic, they'll give you a choice. Do you want to join the amnesty program or do you want to spend some time in jail? I'm guessing most people choose the amnesty program.
Especially because most people that worked for the Empire probably hated the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's a character in one of the books that they did more recently. You would know because you read one of those books. Sinjir Rathvelis.
Who's the best character in those books?
He's terrific. What an attitude he has. But I mean, his character development was interesting. He was an Imperial loyalty officer, so he spent all of his time learning how to brutally mutilate and interrogate other Imperials to find out if they were actually loyal to the Empire. So the fact that they needed that just at all should be indicative of the situation that was going on within the Empire. There were definitely people that were, I mean, and this is, I'm jumping around here, but go back to the Clone Wars. We have a clone army that was brought in by the military to fight a civil war, brought in by the Senate to fight a civil war. The only way that you could transfer power from that of a republic or democracy where that people believe they have a say and have the militia or the armed forces be completely independent of all of that is to turn the situation of society into the Empire with a military that is made up of its own people, because then there's some kind of, there's a totalitarian government that's got control of everything, but it's made up of our own people. It's not a completely foreign or third party entity. So when people are told to fire on unarmed civilians, right? I mean, there are our own soldiers. There's soldiers in this world that are brainwashed. Just look at the conflict going on overseas right now. All it takes is the right propaganda tools to make people, one side believe anything, and then they'll fight, right? So, just having people that you identify with as your own in your armed forces, you buy into it that much more. Your patriotism becomes a factor, and that's why the change from the Empire to clone soldiers to regimented conscripted civilians is it's a really necessary part about how the universe actually develops, and I think it's ultimately brilliant. But
I think you got a small hint of that actually in the conversation between the kind of amnesty community members, just kind of acknowledging, we were a part of this, and we slightly miss it actually.
Right, certain parts of it.
Yeah, certain parts of it. They're like, we were proud to do this, this, and this, but keep that on the DL.
I wouldn't even go that far. I think the things they were proud about or that they enjoyed, they were just talking about their lives. Like he liked those biscuits. Like he just there was a cookie he had in his lunch. Like, I kind of miss that cookie. Like those people were all very well conditioned to think Empire bad, New Republic good. I'll do whatever I can to help.
Right.
And obviously the twist at the end suggests that that programming may not be as reliable as they think all the time.
Right.
Or other things, as the extra twist at the end might take us to believe. So,
kind of in the lead up to that twist, in the amnesty community, Dr. Pershing recognizes someone that he's seen
was
before.
On his ship with Gideon.
We don't get her name at first, and later on in the episode we get it. I believe it was Elias Kane.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Elia Kane.
Not something I think I've ever heard before in any of the
totally
other stories or more. I mean, she's just an Imperial communications officer.
That's all we get.
As we get.
So she kind of, I could say, becomes friendly with Dr. Pershing.
Gets him his biscuits.
Takes him.
Takes him on a little tour.
I called it a date.
You argue.
It really did feel like a date, didn't it? I mean, you go and getting glowy popsicles and what does she want to buy him? A photon fizzler or something?
Yeah, photon fizzler. That's it.
You're not buying a photon fizzle for just anyone.
Yeah.
So, they kind of get to know each other, and Dr. Pershing really likes her.
Yeah, and she's basically was saying how, I went to your TED Talk, basically, and saw what you had to say, thought it was really interesting. And she goes on to say, like, if you think this is something really important and could help the Republic, you should do it. And we see how he's kind of conflicted with this whole thing. He like asks the droid if this is an okay thing for him to do, and the droid's like, absolutely not, you can't clone people.
I think it's not just that his programming to help the New Republic took. It's just he was never like a bad person. He was working in science, and you get that background when he gives his TED Talk. My mother died of something that we could have cured with this technology. There is some internal motivation there. So his thoughts are real.
And then she just kind of pushes him over the edge of like, yeah, you should do it. I can get you the stuff to do this. Yeah.
Right. You can tell there's some push there.
Yeah.
It's kind of the beginnings of she's slightly suspicious. Eventually she kind of convinces Dr. Pershing to go along with her and go ahead and find the tools you need to continue your research, despite the droid saying, no, that's not legal whatsoever. And that kind of starts this sequence of them boarding the Coruscant public transport system.
There was a couple other things. We see him at his work and whatnot, but not to spend too much time on the little details. Basically, they decide to go down to the scrapyard of the Imperial scrapyard they have in Coruscant to get this mobile lab with all the things that he thinks he should need to do the base of his, or restart the basics of his research.
Apparently, the security systems for public transport are just as effective as they are in like Manhattan, for example.
Just stick your foot on the closing door and you're good to go.
No alarms will go off. Nobody will be the wiser. It's all fine.
Setting a great example for all the kids watching. They board the public transit system, and kind of soon after, you would in a public transport system, the ticket droids come around, and they don't have tickets.
And they have to kind of scramble away from these droids, and one of them kind of catches on and starts hunting them down a little bit.
Instead of radioing ahead to send for any type of security personnel, it just slowly walks after them.
I like that because it gave me kind of Terminator vibes. I think that's what Favreau is going for with that.
If you want to talk about Terminator vibes, the scenes from the Night of 1,000 Tears that they showed in Book of Boba Fett, where the K2 droids were just in the wake of the fission bombs that they dropped all over Mandalore, it was just Terminator 2.0 in Star Wars. I loved it.
Yeah, K2 droids are pretty terrifying. I've come to
Andor 2.
Yeah, that on a K2 droid or the IG-11?
Ooh.
What was the question?
K2 versus IT-11 UFC cage fight.
I go IG. Just when his body spins like that, the K2 can't really match that.
The K2 is just a tank. The K2 looks like it was put together to stomp on other things. And IG was like, okay, it's a droid program to do this thing. It's spidery and finicky and cool, but my tank will just sit on you.
12 billion blaster shots.
It could do that, and it can self-destruct, but that's ultimately a Pyrrhic victory, isn't it?
I think there's more to the IG than we even know. I think he has
other. We're still going to find out later this month.
Right. That plot was kind of dropped. Hopefully we come back to it.
Maybe
honestly,
it'll come back.
Cam was so hopeful for that one.
Like I liked IG. I thought Taika Waititi did a good job with his voice. I thought it was nice to have that dynamic between him and Din, but I thought it was dead, and I wanted it to stay that way.
I do appreciate the partnership between Bo-Katan and Din more than IG-11 and Din.
We basically sacrifice IG for Bo-Katan.
Right. What I will say is I'm sitting and thinking about, okay, now that he's not in the Razor Crest anymore, he's in the N1. And he's got about 1.5 cubic inches of storage space in that thing.
How's IG getting in there?
So I think IG is actually perfect because he can fold himself up into like a little.
Oh, that's true.
Just fold, and he could just magnetize right to the bottom of the ship.
Or he could even squish himself into the astromech port.
I like the image of him magnetizing and just standing while Mando flies. That would be legendary.
But like, why? why go that extra mile and dangle that over us? Was it really just to bring Grief Karga back in?
Right.
Okay,
It could be. It could have been.
No, I think they'll bring him back. They didn't have Mando
It'd be cool.
crouch down into the repair bay for no reason. He's gonna do something with that for sure. Maybe at the end of the season.
It might come back for the end, and we'll get
need
to see him back in season 4.
Yeah, he might need some more help later on.
But back to the show. We are in the scrapyard, and they waltz right on in to the Imperial scrapyard, and I forget exactly what they said, but something along the lines of there was no security because the ships don't fly or anything like that. And my only issue with that logic is, okay, sure, the ship itself doesn't fly, but apparently there's lots of valuable stuff
just sitting there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, if it's locked and it takes an Imperial engineer to know how to break said lock, and all the Imperial engineers have been either reconditioned or put in jail, okay, yeah. Part of this whole world is suspension of disbelief, and I'm more willing to accept that than them just walking onto public transport without paying for a ticket. Or tucking and rolling while traveling at, 600 miles an hour?
Right, yeah.
Onto a hard surface and not breaking his big giant glasses.
I think what she was saying actually is just all of this is kind of getting scrapped eventually. So and that was kind of the theme of actually.
Who cares if it gets stolen?
That was kind of Dr. Pershing's whole existence, was everything he was working on was getting scrapped.
Right,
he wasn't even doing anything meaningful. And this was the one thing giving him meaning. So he goes for it. They kind of break into a Star Destroyer. He knows exactly what he's looking for in a lab. It was pretty light. He actually didn't need that much.
Yeah.
He just grabbed
cloning medicine technology.
You're going to clone a whole new generation of troopers to build a new army, or Force sensitives, whatever. We could talk about the Force Unleashed too if we wanted to. But no, he just needed like a backpack. Or honestly, that tray looked like the portable X-ray machine from Will Smith's The Pursuit of Happiness back. I don't know how long ago that was, but that's what it made me think of.
Now, he did originally say, though, it was only for like the basics of it.
True.
And who knows, that might come back to kind of
bite if he's only
talking in the future.
If he's only talking about researching like tissues that have midichlorian counts that are active from Force users, as opposed to actually trying to clone something, if he's going to do it in a petri dish, does everybody really have that big a problem with that? I mean, well, I guess it's ethically illegal in that timeline, which is interesting. But given the uses that given what it was used for in said timeline, I can also understand why the New Republic might be hesitant.
Basically, if this was a video game, you would have seen a text saying, Dr. Pershing acquired briefcase or mobile lab.
Yeah. He just like sticks his hand into a box and pulls out a small shiny object that you can't make out because it's too pixelated, puts it into his cloak, and then the cloak reseals with no visible evidence of an object having gone in there. It's like Batman and his gadgets from the Arkham games. Like he has a gun that's 6 feet long and he just stows it on his utility belt. Boop,
I would love to see that. So we get that. We hear
some rumblings in the ship while they're going. He's getting a little suspicious.
Yeah.
And basically they head out and they start to see other flashlights and whatnot. So they obviously run in the other direction. They're running, and they finally get outside the Star Destroyer, and boom, they're hit by a giant spotlight, and who other than the New Republic is kind of caught up to them, figured out they were there, what they were doing, and goes right for Dr. Pershing and his briefcase, or mobile lab, we should probably call it.
He's kind of confused. He's wondering, why are they just going after me? And then we see one of the New Republic security officers kind of thanks now as she'll be known as Officer Kane of the Amnesty Unit of the New Republic. That was the first kind of twist of the episode. I don't know if we did we see that coming at all?
I feel like part of me wanted to say like she's totally going to betray him somehow.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure if it was for her own personal reasons, if she was doing something for this New Republic, or if she was going to use him over like a long period of time to try to use what he has to offer.
Yeah.
But I did feel some sort of betrayal was coming. I can't say I saw it happening right then and there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, she always had those kind of looks, not to camera per se, but just those looks that were ominous.
Right. She was kind of egging him on a little too
I thought she
much,
was going to be an Imperial agent, to be honest, not an agent of the Republic. But if we want to talk about the next
Right.
twist,
Yeah.
which is, oh, you're putting me in a mind flayer. No, it's just an MRI machine. You're just going to have a little tickle and you'll feel right as rain.
Well, they weren't wrong entirely. That guy wasn't lying, but the machine was still capable of being a mind flayer. So basically, he wakes up, he's strapped down, locked into this machine, wrapped around his head. He knows it to be one of these mind flayers that's basically going to wipe all of his memory. And the doctors there are like, oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's gonna be some therapy for you. Basically, it'll set your mind at ease and we'll get you back to work in no time. And then they basically turn it on. He sees Officer Kane through the window. He's trying to plead his case that, this was her idea. I was trying to help, blah, blah, blah. And they turn the machine on, and at first it doesn't look too bad. It's nice blue little laser waves going to the helmet they put on his head. And Officer Kane's talking to the guy operating it, and he basically says, all right, this will take a while. Shall we head out, and then we'll come check in a little bit later? She's like, oh, he's a friend of mine. I'm just going to stay to make sure he's all right. And so as soon as the other guy walks out, she cranks the machine up to 11, and it turns red and nasty. And we can see Dr. Pershing starting to feel it in there.
Right.
He is being mummified, but the sarcophagus is his body.
From what I understood, I could be wrong. I believe the mind flayer was supposed to kind of trap your mind in a never-ending loop until you basically go insane.
Sounds fantastic.
Where's that? What is that from?
I don't know. I don't know where I'm remembering that from. I could be completely wrong.
So they had in Rogue One, there was that big pink squid monster that Saul Guerrera had. They called it
Gullet.
They didn't call it a mind flayer, did they? Because that's basically what it was.
I think they mentioned it,
Yeah.
But essentially, okay, if that's going to happen to him, cloning storyline over?
Well, she seems to be the one that took his mobile lab.
She did take the lab.
But I can't stop saying that he originally said he was only going to grab the very basics. So did she maybe act a little too hastily? Should she maybe, if she's really going after this technology, trying to bring it to someone or something?
Is that what she's trying to do?
Right. Did she go a little too fast and maybe she didn't grab enough? Maybe she kind of ruined the only person that they could have used to do it. I mean, basically, I'm just sitting here wondering if the New Republic has this machine and they know what it's capable of, why would they even keep the setting to turn it all the way up?
What we right. That was what I was just about to say.
Don't have an MRI machine that can be set to kill.
Mode. What we definitely know is the New Republic is not into torture, as far as we know.
Right.
Well, you would think that.
Right.
Well, this isn't the New Republic, son.
So this essentially leads us to believe she's not really the typical New Republic member that we're expecting. Possibly she's still an agent of the Empire.
Yeah, that's what the question is. Is she working for Moff Gideon? Is she independent? I don't know what's scarier, really, if she's had her own brainwashing done.
My thought actually was perhaps the folks who had kind of ordered this cloning to take place and supported this research, maybe they want Dr. Pershing dead because he's kind of publicizing this work to an audience of the New Republic, and they probably don't want their work out there, especially all the shady things they were likely doing.
Yeah, if that organization is still running.
Right.
So, I mean, because it is... We'll see in Bad Batch, right? Because they showed kind of the base of operations where go back again. Clone Wars, the Zillo monster, right? The big beast they found on, was it Dantooine, where all the Dugs live, the Sebulba-like creatures. Anakin goes to strike that monster, the big three-tailed, three-armed thing, and his lightsaber bounces right off of it. Okay, they subdue it, and then Sheev, good old Sheev, is like, hey, we're going to take this and research it. And then it gets loose in Coruscant, wreaks a bunch of havoc. And then they're like, oh, we've killed it. We're not dealing with this again. And she was like, well, good thing we don't need a live body to do any cloning. Anyway, that monster shows up again in Bad Batch. Spoiler alert. And the people who were dealing with that were those folks were cloners wearing the same insignia that
Yeah.
Dr. Pershing was wearing in episode whatever of season 1 of Mando.
Yeah.
And season 2. I don't remember if we had seen that symbol, that weird I and L looking symbol in the Clone Wars. But we do see it in Bad Batch,
Yeah.
that organization that has the Zilla monster. And their army, by the way, is Republic Commandos, which is interesting. Not like any other type of clone. So Lord knows what they're going to do with that.
Right.
But
essentially,
I'm
we know
curious.
there's a cloning unit out there within the Empire.
Yeah.
And perhaps
This
those...
could be them coming back live action.
Right. Maybe they were some sort of splinter cell when the whole rebellion and all went down. Perhaps they kind of went off on their own. Or perhaps some other higher up figure said, we need to salvage the cloning unit however possible. Maybe someone found a body at the bottom of a shaft.
An exploded body at the end of an exploded shaft.
So just this episode ends with knowing that Dr. Pershing's in a lot of pain right now, and Officer Kane might not necessarily be an officer of the New Republic. And that's kind of the end of the Coruscant story, and then we switch back to Mando and Bo.
Finally, we get one final little taste of actual Mando on the Mandalorian, and the secret place that the New Republic, the Empire would never think to find them, is on the little. We think it's a moon, right? One of the moons of Mandalore.
Yeah.
Still, where their little hideaway is.
I don't think it's one of the moons of Mandalore. Oh, hey guys, listen.
Welcome. The lightsaber is officially working.
Oh,
It's
no.
functioning. Or maybe not.
Close to it.
It made a sound and then it stopped.
There's a sound. There it is.
The first lightsaber that has been brought to BY as well.
Live action lightsaber on Bring Your Own Lightsaber.
I don't like that sound font though. Hold on, give me a sec. No, lame.
I'm right.
Lame. Oh, that's actually a really good one.
I'm right.
Hold on. This is a great font. Okay, thank you for humoring me. My lightsaber is functional. That's a relief.
We have had our first lightsaber on the podcast. And with that, we'll take our second break and we'll come right back and finish up the episode. All right, welcome back from break. We are catching up with Mando and Bo's story. Just kind of Mando's dogfight, and they said they're headed somewhere where the Empire won't follow.
Right. So we come back to
Well, they didn't say that. They said somewhere where the Empire won't find them.
Sure.
I think they would
Fine.
definitely,
They would definitely
follow
follow.
them.
They
if
definitely
they
follow.
could.
If they knew. Okay.
that's a good point. So somewhere they wouldn't find them, and it turns out to be back to the armorer and her little squad
Coven,
of
or covert.
the covert of the traditional Mandalorians. Obviously, he knows he's bathed in the baths and everything, so he shows up with himself being what do they call
An apostate.
an apostate? Yeah.
Well, Paz Vizsla is very quick to remind him of that.
Yeah. And they're not looking happy. He's with Bo-Katan, who also is an apostate, and it's just not a good look necessarily to start. He's bringing this outsider, so to speak, back to their hideaway,
Who's also got a lot of baggage in terms of what their people know.
Right.
and they're not so happy to believe him, or not so happy to see him, and they don't really believe him right away when he says he bathed in these baths in Mandalore. Because they still think it's this poisoned planet. So yeah.
And Mando kind of says, no, like those are lies that you were told to keep
Mhm.
you away, to keep us kind of ununified. And he says, I got the proof right here. I've been to those baths. They exist. They weren't destroyed.
Meanwhile, all I'm thinking is like he could have scooped this water up from the lake
Right.
right when they landed, you know.
Yeah.
So Paz Vizsla says, all right, let me take you to the armor. She'll know what to do with that. And
You can prove it to her.
And she did.
Yeah, she did.
She had a little, I don't know what
Like
that
a
was.
fountain.
We've seen her
bird
pour
bath.
water into that before, and
Yeah.
it makes the same little weird green ripple effect, whatever that indicates, whatever special properties there
Yeah,
are.
some
about water.
element is in the water.
He had the certificate of authenticity. She
I thought he
confirmed
was
it.
going to take out like a Polaroid camera of him, like
Right.
selfie in the wells or something,
Right.
or the baths. But she validates that he was there, and the more I think about it, it still does seem silly that you could do anything wrong, and all you got to do is go dip your toe in this bath, and all is forgiven.
I don't know if it's quite that close to Christianity. I think it's more like you take your helmet off. You have to break their fundamental elements of their creed. I don't know if I would go that
I guess
far.
it is probably just the oath that you break. That's probably the only thing.
Yeah, like if your helmet is removed from you in battle, you lost your battle. I don't know if that makes you not a Mandalorian. It makes you like a weak Mandalorian, which coincidentally might make you not a Mandalorian. But if you willingly took off your own helmet, that was like, bro, you had one job.
Right.
Well, how do you eat, how do you drink, how do you wash your hair?
I mean, we've seen him do it in episode 4 of season 1.
He did it in the last one when he drank the soup.
Yeah.
Partial
It does seem
lift. uncomfortable. It does. Yeah, you wouldn't.
So obviously they tell them, okay, you're both Mandalorians now. Welcome to the
because
the covert.
Bo basically says how she dove in after him, which means she also bathed.
Yeah, although she didn't recite the creed. But
that's not part of it.
Who gives a thing? Who cares? So if they are now Mandalorians, I really wanted them, or I really wanted Bo specifically, to bring up, hey, there was a mythosaur down there. Where it came from, we don't know. How do they? So, do we know about other instances of that? Because they never touch in the Clone Wars. They don't touch in Bad Batch. They don't touch in Rebels.
The armor has the helmet, or it might be the skull,
the signet,
hanging up on her little office wall in there.
Yeah, but it's Lil. The one we saw in the water was Lord.
No, I know. I think it's a helmet. It's a Mandalorian helmet designed with the mythosaur tusks and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So they obviously are aware of all of them and everything, which they would be. But it makes me think like maybe she knows someone that has interacted with one before or something like that. But yeah, I still think that Bo's going to kind of hold on to that information until it's going to like serve her in some way, if that time will come. And if maybe she realizes that it's not going to, then she'll probably get Mando to do it, Din to do it, so that because she knows she can kind of work with him more so than the others.
I mean, the question I have at this stage is, does she care more about Mandalore and the society, or does she care more about herself? And I don't know the answer to that, because she tried to, because she was a member of the Death Watch with Pre Vizsla back in the Clone Wars, and they believed that Mandalorians should be warriors again, and that the current rulers of Mandalore, her sister, right, Satine, that they were weak. And then when that all went down, and now they were in, she was with Maul for a short period of time until he kind of scared her off, and she went and got Ahsoka and Obi-Wan and Anakin at the end of Clone Wars, which what a season that, well, really those last few episodes, unbelievable.
Fantastic.
So they, what is her motive? What's her driving?
I think she still cares about Mandalore. Maybe not necessarily so much the planet, but like the people and the meaning behind it, because I don't think she'd be doing any of this if she didn't believe that. If she so happens to say, get the Darksaber back and become the leader along the way, I think that would be something that she would love to happen, so to speak. But I think at the core, she still believes in the idea.
She still has that motive for sure. One thing I noticed is she's not really saying I as much. Like, it doesn't really seem like it's been about her as much.
She didn't throw Din right under the bus when they. I mean, she did say he fell in and I pulled him out, which let the armorer know by coincidence that she was in the waters as well, as opposed to, well, what actually happened, or just letting him tell his own story.
I was almost just expecting her when the armorer was like, "Oh, well, have you not removed your helmet since you were in the bath? And she was like, no, I was just expecting Bo-Katan to be like, oh, here you go.
Yeah,
Take it right off.
I thought she was going to be like, I don't believe in this.
And that was something we were wondering about in the last episode of the podcast was, will there be a clash between these two characters? Do they have history?
Right.
So far,
I think what seems to happen, how it's working out in my mind, is that beforehand, when we first met Bo-Katan obviously in Clone Wars, and then in the last season of Mandalorian, or was it Boba Fett? Now they're all mixing together. But when we saw her live action for the first time, she did seem more kind of self-motivated, and she was doing it just kind of for her, for the glory of it almost. But after her original
in season 2
run of it got thwarted, it seems like she was in her castle alone, defeated, and didn't came back. She almost has this new passion for it, where it's like, okay, let's do it for real this time. That's how I'm kind of viewing her attitude towards it.
To me, I think ever since she kind of saw that Gideon had lost the Darksaber to him instead of her kind of mindset flipped right there. At least to me. She was sad for sure.
I just want to know if she's going to betray Din to try and claim Mandalore for herself, because that is a big thing with Mandalorian culture. Paz Vizsla displayed all those things in Book of Boba Fett episode 5.
Yeah.
So is that the way she goes, or does she back Din as the potential ruler of Mandalore? Because, the question becomes, and this may be where they go, if Din proves that he does not want to be a real leader, he just wants to be a member of the Coven, or the Covert. Sorry, I keep saying Coven. They're not witches. He just wants to be part of the Covert and continue on the way. Then she might say, then I'm going to challenge you because this is what needs to happen.
Right.
The question is, well,
maybe part of it is she's starting to realize, I had my shot, I couldn't do it. Maybe he's the one to, and I can help him do that and kind of be his secondhand woman.
Yeah. I will say they made it very clear. True.
I don't think the ship, because we got Raylo and it was awful. It was like 3. What did you say?
How do they?
What do they call that?
I don't know how they make
helmets.
I don't know how they make more Mandalorians.
That's the official term for it.
They just headbutt each other.
Headbanging. They did make it very clear that she did not say this is the way.
No,
she did not.
She did
Everyone
not.
around her did, and she was very much not.
She said it to Din at one point.
I think she was almost like mocking him.
That was a mock.
No,
to me.
you think so?
I do.
Yeah.
Well, now I want to run it back.
Like in serious conversation almost, and she was just like, "Yep, this is the way."
I call instant replay. Where's the TV remote?
They definitely gave her.
We can look it up and then discuss the findings on the next episode.
Well, you could do the next episode. You could take another break. How
many breaks can our audience take? They did definitely give her 2 opportunities at the end to say it, and she didn't say it in those 2 moments in front of everyone else.
Right.
She said it several times in the last few episodes, but I'm not saying that they were all not mocking, but I didn't get that vibe from this episode.
Yeah. We'll go back and recap, and then we can give a conclusion in the next episode.
All right.
They do
leave the audience on a cliffhanger.
They do kind of pan the camera just on her for several moments throughout this, and I think that's them saying she's thinking of some things right now.
Well, you know what else? Paz Vizsla just didn't come and greet them after that whole thing, and I'm wondering if he's gonna look.
Well, they showed everyone going, touching their shoulders, like "Welcome back," basically, and he was standing in the corner, like.
I wonder how much he knows about what happened to Pre Vizsla and her role in it.
Right.
I mean, she supported Pre Vizsla till he died, and then she left. Right. She left when Maul took power. So I don't know where we go from there. I mean, does he go to Bo-Katan and say, "Listen, our ancestors, our parents. No, she was there. You and my dad, I guess, or whoever Pre Vizsla was to Paz Vizsla, were doing what I think is the right thing to do. And I want to. He either says back my claim or I will follow you. But I think he's anti-Din. I'm just curious if that's going to play into what's going on with Bo
trio.
and Din.
I mean,
Love triangle.
He could easily just challenge for the Darksaber again. I don't
Right.
think there's a limit on that.
I think Din wouldn't kill him, but I think if you challenge somebody repeatedly for their weapon, they might just kill you.
Yeah. I mean, not a bad outcome. He's kind of an annoying character.
I know.
He's a cool character.
I like
giant jetpack.
He's also a badass.
No butt plate.
No butt
Right.
plate on it.
If you have
Gigantic
Giant
jetpack.
jetpack.
I think there's very clearly two like lateral thrusters, one on either side of the center. But I felt like that there was a bit in the center that might have been a third thruster.
Yeah.
So
Especially on
that
his
one
side.
is not just a cheek removing thruster. That one's a crack removing thruster.
Right. You don't want that one to hit the wrong way.
So that's basically where we're left off. Good cliffhanger. Real quick, to wrap up the episode, where do you guys think? What are we hoping for next episode, and kind of rest the season with this new information?
For me personally, I want the next episode to just be within the code.
Dogfighting with
With Mace Windu coming in. No, I want the next episode to just...
They raise the mythosaur from the depths, and then
Yeah.
Mace Windu shows up and cuts it in half.
Throws that out.
I don't like Mandalorians.
He
Cuts
says,
off somebody else's head.
he says, I'm back, mother effers.
Throws people out windows. That's how it feels.
To our audiences, we used our one swear word earlier to describe an exhaust port, so couldn't use it for Mace Windu. Sorry.
Sorry, so Ryan, you're
Next time.
What you're hoping for?
What I'm hoping for is just an entire episode within the covert and explaining sort of the dynamics of what that's going to be like moving forward. We do have all these things that we're juggling. What is Bo's kind of motivation? Din's back. Does he really like it there? And Paz Vizsla is angry all the time.
Right. It does kind of feel like, as much as Din wants to be kind of this traditional Mandalorian, he's kind of seeing some of the other ways that you can live. That people, especially seeing Bo-Katan, like there are Mandalorians that don't follow all these silly rules and everything like that. So maybe he's starting to see the outside or see the light a little bit more, and he doesn't feel that need to follow exactly this one strict way.
Oh, I just remembered something from episode 2 that I didn't get to share because I wasn't here for episode 2. I loved that Bo said to Grogu when he shows up to get her to rescue Din, she's like, "Where's your dad?" She said dad. She said the word dad in that episode about Din and Grogu's relationship.
Maybe in the next
I like
episode
that.
we'll see Din officially adopt Grogu.
Oh, good.
I would like to see Grogu say his first words. That would
That's
be
all. That's
that.
all.
I felt like
Maybe
it
it's gonna
almost
be dad.
happened.
Maybe it's gonna be dad.
I think they've been hinting towards that.
They've been laying the seeds for that for sure. Is Grogu a member of the covert?
I think he's
Oops, he's still a foundling, right?
Yeah, he's a foundling.
He did not. He doesn't have a helmet. I think
'Cause
that
they
means
had a
That's the next
foundling
step.
that they were inducting at the beginning of or somewhere in episode 1, right when Din shows up and shoots the monster. That kid wasn't wearing a helmet, right? So that's why we all thought it was a flashback to Din, but then it wasn't.
No,
a
right.
flashback.
And that's why, because the helmet was like a teenage helmet.
Yeah.
So that's why we thought originally it was a little baby Grogu.
Does this
Imagine-
work like a hermit crab? Hermit
Well, I'm just
crab.
saying, imagine a baby Grogu
You
helmet
can't
that
grow
has little
unless
ears.
you get a bigger helmet.
Oh,
you
that's
just
true.
get stuck in
Yeah,
that
you're
thing.
stuck in your helmet unless you get
That-
a bigger helmet. Then
That's
you
the
can grow.
way.
But just imagine a
This is the
Mandalorian
way.
helmet with Grogu ear, like
Ear
that look like
pouches.
horns poking out the side.
Yeah,
Oh man!
I think.
I think they would leave them open.
Oh, just let the
Yeah.
real ears poke out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we're realizing he's not officially a member until he has a helmet. Especially with that last episode, pretty much that was an initiation
Right,
as far as we
right.
could tell. So,
Them's is the rules.
so he needs a helmet.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll see that this
Go with
season.
this cute little chainmail.
The armorer does like Grogu. We've seen that in the past.
Yeah.
Can I just say one thing based on what you were saying, Cam, about the covert itself and the different ways and different options that are open to Mando? This particular covert has kind of failed quite a few times.
Right.
They got absolutely destroyed on Navarro by stormtroopers of all things.
Mhm.
No, they didn't get.
They got wiped out. There were so many
They
helmets.
left. They left. I thought.
There was a lot of
Some-
bodies.
Some that escaped.
There was a lot of
And got away.
bodies
There
from
were a lot of
stormtroopers.
Downed
Yeah.
Mandalorians.
That's tough. But yes, they did come back.
They stayed
and
in
wreak
hiding.
havoc.
Yeah.
So that was nice. When
maybe this will be a chance for like the armorer and everyone to kind of realize, hey, there's like a balance. Like we can a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
learn from each other. Yeah.
I would like Pedro to get some more screen time, some FaceTime.
Yeah.
I don't know if he necessarily does.
I
I
don't
think
think he
he
does
likes
either.
that he can
He
just
has enough in
voice
The
it
Last of Us.
and he doesn't have to do anything. Yeah.
Well, you can tell when it's him and when it's not him. The stunt doubles they had in some of the earlier seasons had their shoulders weren't quite as broad.
Yeah.
Different. Yeah. Any final thoughts? Any final predictions or things we want to touch on?
More Bo-Katan of the Darksaber?
Yeah, I want to see
Yes.
Thrawn at the end of this.
I think Endgame, we're still hoping Ezra, Thrawn come back.
Yeah. I know you're crazy about Ezra. I am not an Ezra
Big
fan.
Ezra guy.
I'm not an
Really?
Ezra fan, but I would like to see him. I think that would be interesting.
Be cool if Kanan, the whole squad showed up,
Well,
honestly.
Kanan's dead.
Kane's dead. Yeah.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
I liked Kanan.
Force Ghost Kanan.
No, World Between Worlds.
Oh,
Back
that,
in time to get
that
Kanan.
whole thing.
Sure.
What do you think? They whisk him out from inside the explosion?
Just like they
like
did to
Ahsoka?
Ahsoka.
Yeah, you could have had. That
Hey.
kind of breaks the universe, but they could use that to kill the sequel trilogy, and I would be okay with that.
I would
That
be
would
very
fine.
okay with that. Filoni knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, Favreau and Filoni are they're in charge.
What a better way to end.
And that other director, she did the episode. She did the episode with Bo-Katan, her premiere episode. Yeah, Ron. Oh God.
Oh,
Can you just say it, honey, please?
Oh, I don't know.
last name Howard.
Ron Howard's daughter.
Yeah.
Bryce Dallas Howard.
Bryce Dallas
Yes.
Howard.
I guess she's just been doing some directing, but I liked her episodes a lot more than I've liked most of the other ones.
Yeah.
I think.
I think I think my favorite episodes might just be Ahsoka
That was
introduction.
A really good episode.
You could
Yeah.
tell
That
Dave
was-
Filoni's
what
hands
was
were
his name?
all
Was
over
Rick
that.
Fukuhara? Is that the guy's name?
Oh,
The
Dave
director?
directed that one.
Dave directed that one.
Yeah.
Well,
I think.
okay. Yeah, no, you might be right.
No, I'm just remembering. I was imagining in my head if Din Djarin gives up the Darksaber. I was wondering.
You
what
can't just
happened-
give it up, though. It has
Well, no,
to be
no.
taken.
If he ends up not being the one in possession of it,
Okay.
I was thinking, can he get his
Context.
his Beskar spear back? But
Nope,
then I
that-
remembered they melted it down for little Grogu
Yep.
chainmail.
Yep.
Uh,
I would like to see.
I'm
Pedro
wondering
with
if we're
the
going to
spirit.
see that come into effect at some point this season, because I
The
felt like that
change.
was a big end piece of last season, and it'd be kind of a waste if they did this whole thing to get him the chainmail and it didn't matter.
Right.
I do want to.
So I'm sure there's going to be some
He was wearing
bad
it
things happening
in
to
Book of Boba Fett when he showed up.
right, but just like see it protect him and
Right.
stuff like that.
I don't really want to see him get shot at, to be honest.
No, but it could be like a bad guy with lightsaber comes in, tries to kill the last or one of the last Force sensitive kids, but
Dude,
chainmail armor stops lightsaber.
Whichever one of you said Ryan, you said earlier. Sorry, I can't breathe. If they brought Ezra in as a bad guy, I think that would be a really interesting. There would be a lot of questions.
That'd be great.
There
There
would
would
be
be
a
a lot.
lot of
And
I
questions.
then
think
there would have to
Ahsoka,
be live action rebels.
because then that would be two
Or it could
Force
be
users
Ahsoka.
could actually
Yeah.
duel. Imagine an Ahsoka
Wow.
versus Ezra fight. Ezra's all powerful because he's a dark side user. Ahsoka's very zen. We get to see a live action dual wielding lightsaber duel.
And there's so much
We haven't seen
emotional
that yet.
weight there, knowing
Right.
that Sabine. I mean, that
Yeah,
it
what
was
happened
pretty
to
much
her?
a romance. I felt
Yeah.
With
like,
her and Ezra.
yeah,
Yeah.
So good things to look forward to.
Yeah,
I hope, man. If we don't get at least one of these things,
they've done everything right so far in the show. So it'd be hard to
trust in
believe
Dave.
that
Trust in
they-
Dave.
I mean, it would be hard for me to believe that there was no connection to Rebels strictly because of the Lightspeed Space Ones.
Yeah.
Why else would they bring
Yeah.
those in?
I
The only other time we've seen them.
I'm with you.
Is Ezra.
I'm with you on that.
Do you think we'll see Ahsoka this season in The Mandalorian? We know she
I
has her
think
own
so.
show coming.
I
Do you
think so. I think
that's-
this
they
is
gotta
going to
transition
be
it.
prequel of the Ahsoka show.
I-
End of
yeah.
this season will be
I don't know if I-
introduce the Ahsoka show.
In that
Okay,
case, yeah, maybe Thrawn will show up in this. And
I think he's got to be the big bad. at
Similar
end
to
of
the
it.
way that the ending of Book of Boba Fett was prequel to this season of Mando, I think the end of this season could be.
I mean,
prequel
if they
to
were
something.
able to keep Luke Skywalker in episode 8 of season 2 a secret, they can keep Thrawn a secret.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's just going to be such a
Dude,
scene.
if they got Benedict Cumberbatch to put on blue face paint,
Just go for
dude,
it. Yeah.
that'd be amazing.
He's
got the cheekbones for it, man. I'm telling you.
I mean, he needs a good voice. That's so important.
Yeah.
He
Well,
needs.
And Benedict
So-
Cumberbatch is
Yeah.
that voice.
Did they do for Cad Bane? They got the voice actor to do the voice, and they had like a stunt actor do the makeup and everything.
Oh, that's cool.
I mean, I think Benedict Cumberbatch does have a really good voice, and he could
Yeah.
probably because he did Smaug and everything.
Yeah, Darth Maul, at least originally, had different voice.
Yeah, Ray
and-
Park played
and
Darth Maul,
physical.
the character, the actor. Well, that was the actor who played Darth Maul in the live action.
That had what,
And
like
then,
one word in the entire movie.
Yeah, and now I can't remember the name of the guy who voiced him.
Something
Mercer?
Serafinowicz. I think in episode 1 at least. Now Sam Witwer.
Sam
This
Witwer.
is it.
That's who I'm talking about. Yeah. Sam Witwer, because he did the voice of Galen Merrick in the Force Unleashed
Force
series.
Unleashed.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
Yeah, he is good. There's a lot of emotion in the way he speaks. I remember when I first heard that voice when I saw Solo for the first time in theaters, I heard the voice and I was like, that's Darth Maul. That's Darth Maul. And I didn't shout it, but I said it out loud. And my dad was like, what are you talking about? And then the robot legs and the pandering to the fan base by having him ignite his lightsaber.
I mean, to someone who's never watched any of the animated stuff, you're still waiting for Darth Maul's return. to the movies.
Well, no, if you haven't seen any of the animated stuff,
You're not watching Mandalorian.
Oh, you
You're
are.
probably-
Well, you could,
Yeah,
but you wouldn't.
you
You'd be
just-
very lost.
Someone who just watches.
the live
Live
action
action.
stuff. I guess you probably saw
For
Solo. Then you're like, wait, he's alive,
Right.
and that's it. That's all we get. Yeah.
You're waiting for that Darth Maul movie, probably.
Oh.
Unfortunately.
Dude, I would like to see
That'd
a
be cool.
sequel to
That'd be
Solo or to follow up that story. I thought that movie was actually decent. I went in
Yeah.
with very low expectations, and
Wasn't
I
bad.
thought, you know what, this was a fun ride.
Yeah.
Star Warsy, a
That's a good word.
lot of
It was
one-liners, I
just
guess.
Star Warsy.
I don't think I need to see a sequel to Solo. I'd love to see the title just be Maul, and have Maul
Yeah.
versus Vader.
Maul versus Vader, you think? Well, no, I want to see Obi-Wan versus Maul. If that's what they did with the Obi-Wan show.
Kind of saw it though.
Well, we saw it in Rebels.
Yeah.
But it was Rebels. I want to see it live action.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Retcon that,
Well,
that
no.
one episode.
Not a 3-second fight.
No, I
Yeah.
want to. I was so pissed when I saw that for the first time, and then I watched like all the commentary on Dave Filoni's choices for the episode, and I was like, okay, you're absolutely right. That was
Yeah.
absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
But give me the
Yeah.
expletive lightsaber fight.
I just think Vader versus Maul would be so fun. It would be just go bonkers with it.
Yeah.
Just pulling like ships out of
Two
orbit.
half robots going at it.
I don't know.
I think we're spiraling here on all the
Yeah, we
possible
could
theories.
talk about this for days. So we'll wrap it up here. We'll see you next week, and hope you enjoyed Mandalorian Chapter 19. Thanks for joining, Greg.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's been a blast.
And folks, remember always
Bring your own lightsaber.